the 29,000 watt flamethrower. The Mighty 93.3 WMMR, Philadelphia.
Well, if you're from the Philly or South Jersey area, you are no doubt familiar with the terrific radio station 93.3 WMMR. I've been a fan for more than 50 years, and I now have the pleasure of talking with the author of a brand new book about the Mighty WMMR. That happens to be the book's title. And the author is this talented woman, Erin Riley. Erin, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this wonderful book and station. And so thanks. Good to see you.
Yeah. Well, I read the book last week, and it is terrific. I have no shortage of questions for you. So let's start with your history at WMMR. You worked there for 7.5 years, 1983 to 91, but it all started in kind of an odd way for you in that you had hoped to be a DJ, but the bosses there had other plans for a then 23-year-old Erin Riley.
That is true. I am from the East Coast, and I grew up going to concerts at the Spectrum. I lived in Central Jersey, so this is my home where my family lives. But I had gone out to California to sort of find myself, you know, like people do, and I broke into radio on the West Coast. So I was a DJ on the West Coast at radio stations in Los Angeles and also in Santa Barbara, California, and so I thought I was going to be a DJ for my career. So fast forward to, I get a call from Charlie Kendall, the program director at WMMR, and he's offering me an air shift, and I'm ready to move back home. I quit my job with zero notice to my bosses, much to the chagrin of them, and showed up in Charlie's office where he said, I have good news and I have bad news. Next thing I know, I was offered the job of music director. So I didn't really know what that meant or what I was supposed to do, but I, at that point, was jobless. So I certainly took that.
Heck yeah. Hey, your book focuses primarily on WMMR from its inception in 1968 up through the early 1990s. And man, the stories you got to tell about the 1970s were quite entertaining. The always hungry Ed Shockey, program director Jerry Stevens disappearing for a month, Michael Tearson chopping down an office door with an axe. Tearson told you he was stoned pretty much the whole time late at night. Michael was and is quite a character.
Yeah, Michael was my first interview. So I was asked by Temple University Press to interview 60 people. Michael was the first one, such an interesting character.
Michael Tearson on Into the Night. Get ready, because we're going to launch another 16-song music marathon with Asia in just a minute.
We spent, oh my God, about 3 hours on the phone. Yeah, he sure has a lot of stories and tells them in a colorful way. And that's why he is so beloved by the audience in the Philadelphia area, because he won his way into their hearts, and his music knowledge is just beyond. Like, he is an encyclopedia. So that's Michael.
I mentioned that he admitted to being stoned. There was some drug usage in the 1970s. What did Charlie Kendall tell you when he hired you?
Charlie Kendall, as I told you, he said there's good news and bad news, offered me the music director job. I'm still kind of in stun mode, not really knowing what's going to happen to me. And the very closing, last thing he said to me before he sent me on my way to check out my new office was, oh, and by the way, pay for your own drugs. All right, thank you. And I'm like, yes, sir, pay for own drugs. Okay. Well, you know, what he meant is, you know, we've probably all heard of payola and, you know, record company executives and people partying and whatnot back in the 70s, maybe early 80s. And sometimes they might expect in exchange for some transfer of party materials, you know, a little heavy rotation on my new band. And he didn't want the radio station to be compromised in any way whatsoever. He said, do whatever you want to, just don't put the station on the hook.
Well, as music director, you would regularly deal with record company folks who would try to convince you to, you know, play the artist they represented. Sounds like they did pretty much try to bribe you to that end.
Well, listen, I would say that the bribing was more either for top 40 radio or, you know, payola scandals and whatnot, and maybe more so in the 1970s. At least my experience, it was very subtle. The bribery was more like, let's make sure Erin's gets the first one backstage to meet Bruce Springsteen, or let's make sure we pick Erin up in a limo to take her to a French restaurant before she goes to New York to see this band. So yeah, I guess that's bribery. You know, they're just charming, and they have an expense account that obviously gets charged back to the artists that they're promoting. So it was the bands that ended up paying for everything. But yeah, I guess you can call that bribery. Yeah, sort of.
Hmm.
Sort of. They influenced me, but they also had to come up with, let me just say, chart positions and sales and other market successes for bands and whatnot. Like, they were doing a job.
Bruce Springsteen, number 1 today with Trapped. That's the top 5 at 5 for today here on WMMR. We'll run it down again tomorrow.
Joe Bonadonna arrived in 1977, stayed for more than 20 years. I remember him well for the music marathons, the top 5 at 5, the Soul Patrol, and he was program director during your time there, and you wrote that you and he didn't always agree on the music MMR should be playing.
Joe Bonadonna became the program director at the very end of my tenure there, maybe 90 after 7 years. So I worked for Charlie Kendall, George Harris, Ted Utz, and then Joe Bonadonna. Joe Bonadonna was more conservative than I was. Having come from California and working at K-Rock in Los Angeles, which was the new Rock of the 80s format, I was really hired at MMR to make sure that they could position themselves in an, somewhat offensive way against I-92 that was coming into Philadelphia with the Rock of the 80s format. No one in Philadelphia knew that music, whether that be Adam Ants or, Joy Division or any kind of alternative stuff wasn't getting any traction in Philadelphia. So that's why I was hired, to make sure that that had a place on MMR, or we at least knew how to position ourselves against that. That's not Joe's world. Joe's world is, more Foreigner, the Rolling Stones, the safer stuff, Eric Clapton, that's his stuff. And to be honest with you, you always have to come back to that if you're, programming for WMMR. That's the meat and potatoes of WMMR's audience, our classic rock to, well, it was new rock at the time. He made me work very, very hard to get new bands on the radio added. And we did, butt heads a lot. But I came to learn through interviewing him for the book that he was more like the station dad. He wanted to make sure we didn't veer too far one way or another, because if that happens with the radio station, that's when the ratings can fall and you lose your loyal listeners, and then you're changing format. And WMMR hasn't changed format in 58 years.
And speaking of adding bands to the playlist, I was a stay up late guy, so I would often listen to Lynn Kratz, the diva of darkness. And in the book, she reflects on many of the terrific popular local bands of the early 1980s. And man, there were a bunch of them. Erin, run down some of those artists.
Well, certainly everybody knows the Hooters and Tommy Conwell and Baru Review, John Eddy. We had, Alan Mann. We had, Ken Queter and the Secret Kids. And, there are tons of local bands, Robert Hazard and the Heroes, that were doing fabulously in the Philadelphia area. And a lot of that is thanks to people like Charlie Kendall and also Jeff Pollack, the program director before him in the late 70s. They wanted that sort of cool in the street image, and they wanted to, it's almost like kind of like free entertainment. You try to hire the Rolling Stones to come and do a broadcast for you, and that's going to cost you something you can't afford. But if you ask Robert Hazard to do it, not only do they want to work with a radio station to help, grow their listenership or their fan base or whatnot, but they're going to cost you a lot less, or they're going to do it for free for you. And then your listeners can come and, take advantage of that. They can come and be live and in person at the local clubs. All they got to do is run down to Grendel's Lair on South Street or something like that. So, it just created this whole synergy. You could play the local bands on the radio. You could do a live broadcast with them. You could help the club owners sell tickets, and then the audience would come out, and it all just kept, like this whole energy in Philadelphia.
In late 1983, you mentioned the Hooters, by the way, your first year as music director, the Hooters Amore album came out, and MMR did play it heavily. You interviewed Eric, Rob, and Dave from the Hooters, and they acknowledged just how crucial MMR was to their career.
Yes, absolutely. I was there the day they brought that record in, Amore. They're, beautifully produced and wonderful, independent record before they were on Columbia Records, with so many good songs. And they brought it to me in the music office, and I didn't even listen to it because I'd already seen them live. I knew how good they were. I ran it down with the band, with Eric and Rob were there, to Pierre Robert in the midday show. He was already in the midday show at that point. And he just put on track 1 and then talk to the band, and then track 2, talk to the band, track 3, talk to the band. Next thing you know, the program director is like running down the hall going, "What are you doing? You're doing like a whole half hour for a local band." We're like, "We can't stop. It's so good." But yes, the energy behind the Hooters, and then, the school spirit contest we did with them, where we had like a write-in contest for high schools. They had to write in a 3x5 card that said WMMR and the Hooters and the name of their high school. And we got 26 million entries. We had to actually rent a warehouse to, store these entries from all the different local area high schools. And we couldn't even count them. There were so many. We had to weigh the cards from the different schools. And Shawnee High School won a concert. So, and then they had so much fun. The Hooters at that concert, they did a whole tour of high schools. So those stories are all told in the book from the perspective of the Hooters, and as they were gaining traction in the Philadelphia area, and then got signed to Columbia Records and got on MTV, and then opened Live Aid, and they keep on going. They're still going. Same thing, 50 years later.
Well, Pierre said the local band thing is one of the coolest parts of WMMR's history, and man, he's not wrong. Speaking of Pierre, man, I was devastated by his passing last fall, but he arrived at MMR a couple of years before you. You worked with him for your entire tenure there. Tell us about Pierre Robert and your relationship.
Pierre is, just everything you would imagine. He is, just by knowing him on the radio. There he is, lovely Pierre. And his warm voice and his friendly nature and his patience with people. Pierre would treat everybody the same. Didn't matter if you were Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, or Jon Bon Jovi, his close personal friend, or some, annoying listener that cornered him at a club and wouldn't let him get away for an hour. He would take the time for absolutely everyone. He was present with people. He was warm with people, and that's who he is as a person.
Radio, to me, it's such a more personal form of communication because it can go into places where television can't. It can go into your cubicle at work. It can be outside if you work outside. It could be in a factory. It could be in a warehouse. So all these people from all these walks of life, and the personal connection that allows radio to be a friend, to keep you company.
All of my memories with Pierre are good. Absolutely. They're either funny or they're warm. Nothing is bad. I have no bad memories with Pierre. He would call me our lovely musical director. So when I would and I was the music director, but only Pierre called me the musical director. And it just sounded so musical. I just loved it. So I felt like I was special to him. And I had the great fortune to spend Pierre's last Christmas with him before he passed. So he was a lifelong friend and a wonderful human being, and he is very missed by all of Philadelphia.
Yeah, everybody who met Pierre loved that guy. John DeBella arrived in 1982, and with his great cast of characters on The Morning Zoo, he helped take MMR to the top of the Philly radio ratings heap by 1985. Any favorite memories of your time with DeBella?
Oh, Jesus. So how many hours do you have for this? We could go on and on and on with DeBella. My God. First of all, I do want to say, with regard to the local bands, that was one of the sort of deciding factors for John to come to Philadelphia. He was on Long Island at WLIR. He was offered jobs in Manhattan, in New York City. He could have been the next big New York City jock, and he is a New Yorker. But he was offered this morning job by Charlie Kendall. He drove down to Philadelphia to kind of check out this area. And he listened to all the competing radio stations, WIOQ, WMMR, and WYSP. And he heard local bands on all of them. And he's like, I want to be here. I want to be here. These people are doing like a kind of radio I want to be a part of, not big corporate radio. So he relocated to Philly, and with his show called The DeBella Travesty. He had originally wanted to go into theater. He wasn't really looking to be a radio DJ, but he's such a funny guy that he started working with a National Lampoon radio show, and it kind of took off from there. So yeah, John is a very strong personality. I say that, I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. He knows what he wants. He's direct. He's funny. He's intelligent.
To be exact, I'm a morning man. Now, what this means is that I get up ridiculously early so that you get up on time and have somebody to curse at all the way to work.
He is a Renaissance man like you wouldn't believe. He's a woodworker now, of a Class A woodworker. Go find his John DeBella woodworking site. He makes all kinds of beautiful handmade wood pieces. And he was always dressed to the nines. I'd get there, 6 o'clock in the morning. That guy's in like a suit and taps and some, custom printed shirt and cufflinks. He's stylish and he's an art collector. He's really an extraordinary human being. And I spent just as much time interviewing him as I did Michael Tearson. We could have gone on for 6 hours. So.
And you did get into the whole DeBella Howard Stern thing in the book. We're not going to talk about that here, but people know about it, and it was certainly interesting. Hey, do I remember you made some sort of a bet with Jon Bon Jovi?
I did. Well, this speaks to Jon Bon Jovi and what a genuinely terrific, nice person he is, with his heart in the right place. Like, many people might know that Jon Bon Jovi has Jon Bon Jovi's Soul Kitchen. And he also has built, homes for the homeless with his money. So he is grateful for his success. He works very hard for it, and he gives back to the community. So he's always been like that. Always. He was never a partier. He was always doing his job, promoting his band and promoting his career. And he was the hardest working guy I ever saw. So Jon was recording the second album, 7800 Degrees Fahrenheit, in Philadelphia at the Warehouse Recording Studio with Obie O'Brien and Lance Quinn down on Delaware Avenue. So that's where they were recording the second Bon Jovi album. So he was hanging around all the time at that time. He was hanging at the station, hanging with Bubba, hanging with me, whatever. Invited me down to the studio. He goes, I got a song I want to play for you. And so he played me You Give Love a Bad Name. And I just sat there kind of dumbfounded. And I did, before anybody ever heard it besides the guys in the band. And he goes, what do you think? And I says, #1 song. And he goes, maybe top 10. Like, we're really proud of it. But, #1, come on. And he would always be so humble. He'd go, I ain't no Bruce Springsteen, which I always thought was sweet of him. Like, because he adores Bruce Springsteen as a poet and a writer. I ain't Bruce Springsteen. I'm like, it's still a #1 song, Jon. I'll bet you $5. And I think about 9 or 10 months later, he drove from Sayreville down to Philadelphia and put an envelope with a $5 bill under my music director office door with a note that said, $5 for you, $1 million for me. Thanks for all your love and support. And I still have it.
Oh, wow. What a great story. What a great story. How about this?
Yeah. That's Jon. And I thought he really captured what I wanted to be, what I wanted the book to tell, the story I wanted it to tell it was about community. The time that, and still, WMMR is about community. It's about community between the listeners and the DJs and the musicians and the club owners and the promoter, everything. It's all about a sense of being like family, or the DJ is your best friend. So Jon read the book and he totally captured that is the essence of the story I was trying to tell about what WMMR meant to everybody.
Hey, WMMR still today is doing pretty well, especially Preston and Steve in the morning. But to be honest, these aren't the best of times for terrestrial radio amid competition from, Spotify, Sirius XM, audiobooks and whatnot. And I remember this line from your book: the internet didn't kill radio, greed did. How so?
Well, when any business becomes extremely profitable, investors are coming in. They want to make money. People want to make money. That's, they look at businesses that are going to make money, and there's no overhead with radio, or there can be almost no overhead. The only overhead is the talent, right? You got a free, wavelength to broadcast your commercials on that you can charge people for. So, it's like kind of low overhead and high profit margins. So a lot of people who owned radio stations were, it was timely for them to be able to sell the radio stations for a good profit. And another thing that happened was in 1996, there was the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that sort of took the restrictions off how many stations, TV and radio, a company could own in a market. So then suddenly that opened the doors, the floodgates, for huge wealthy corporations to come in and snatch up like 49% of the media in a market, and then carefully position them against each other so they don't steal audience. And there's not the same, radio wars and the fun competition that we had and who gets a record first and whatever. It took away a lot of that. So yeah, the greed of, people who, money is more important than art too. And, we live amongst those people.
I love how you wrapped up the book with many of the former MMR staffers telling you what made WMMR special, just like Jon Bon Jovi mentioned, a sense of community, listeners feeling a bond, the authenticity. And then a couple of paragraphs from the late, great Pierre Robert which just brought a tear to my eye, to be honest. So,
Me too.
yeah. Let me ask you, what was it that made WMMR so special for you?
Well, it really, it's like sort of like a microcosm of like that time frame. At least from my life, I was born in 1959, so I'm getting up there, getting long in the tooth now. But my childhood and formative years were the 70s and the 80s. And the 70s was fantastic. I mean, the 60s too. But the 70s was such a good time. And I have such wonderful memories of the music was so great. And, we're just, I don't know, less stress. It seemed like, you could really live your life. You didn't have cameras on you all the time. You weren't being tracked everywhere you went. There wasn't evidence if you were, being a teenager, whatever. Just kind of learning how to be a human being. And so WMMR, I feel like, was there for those people at that time, exposing them to great music. If you hear this music and you like it, say some particular band, whatever, you like Genesis or Yes or Gentle Giant or some progressive rock, and then you meet somebody else that heard that on MMR, suddenly you have an instant friend. Oh, I love them too. Let's go see their show or whatever. It kind of developed, helped people develop who they became, what their tastes were, who they connected to, who they felt community with. So yeah, my favorite part of one of my favorite parts of the book that gets told over and over again is at one point we had a 950,000 cume. That means there are almost 1 million people listening to WMMR at any given moment. So when you're driving down the Schuylkill Expressway and you're stuck in traffic and you're bopping your head to WMMR and you look over to the right and there's somebody bopping their head with the same rhythm, you're like, yeah, hey, and suddenly, you got a friend, right? You got a friend. Somebody's doing the same thing as you are. And that really does create like a human energy of connection that I think is greatly missing in society today.
I could talk about WMMR and your book for another couple of hours, Erin, but we do have to wrap up. So like a bad football offense, let's do 3 and out. I'm going to hit you with 3 quick ones, 3 brief answers from you. Okay.
Okay.
Number 1, tell everybody how the late Bubba John Stevens got that nickname.
Bubba John Stevens here in the nighttime on WMMR.
Bubba John Stevens got that nickname, I believe. John DeBella called him Porky at an event for the Porky's Revenge movie premiere. And Bubba was like, you're not calling me Porky, no way. And he goes, how about Bubba? And he was like, kind of like the sound of that. And that stuck forever. So it really was from John DeBella came up with it. John DeBella had a nickname for everyone. We all had nicknames from John. Yes.
Bubba John. Secondly, what are 2 or 3 of your favorite now defunct Philly area bars or music spots?
Oh, geez. Well, I still mourn it's a restaurant, but Astral Plane. I mourn Astral Plane on 17th and Lombard. I took so many rock stars to dinner at that restaurant. Just love that. So, gosh, I don't know. Let's see. We had a lot of fun at the Empire Rock Club in the Northeast. We did so many live broadcasts from there. I don't know if you know this, but I sang backup for a local Philadelphia band called Radio Rodeo. And so we performed there often, and we couldn't perform with the girl backup group at Dobbs because the stage was like this big, right? So the band would perform without us, or we'd have to stand on the floor. So the Empire Rock Club, I saw a lot of great shows at the Trocadero, And then I have billions of memories from the Spectrum, and I actually own a set of Spectrum chairs. So when they blew it up, I got a pair of chairs, and they sit out on my back porch, and I, remember all the great shows I saw at the Spectrum, like from 1972 and on.
Very cool. Finally, WMMR has had countless classic station IDs. Do you have a particular favorite or 2?
Oh, I guess I like the Wizard of Oz one. All of those old Jerry Stevens IDs that were done with Paul Messing, they were extraordinary. Jerry Stevens was the program director early on, probably the first program director or one of the very first. And he had a beautiful speaking voice and beautiful cadence. So he would be the one that'd say, 93.3 FM, Philadelphia, the radio station. Like, it was just so classy. And the Paul Messing, who was the production engineer at the time, he applied all kinds of different things to that same recording of Jerry's.
At FM 93.3, we're WMMR, Philadelphia. the radio station.
So creative. So creative, but all of them. Hey, there's one, listen, I'm going to put this out there and maybe somebody can help me find the answer to this. No one knows the answer. There's one of Bruce Springsteen, fake Bruce Springsteen, singing Growing Up in Philadelphia. No one knows where it came from. So if anybody out there in your listenership, no one. People thought maybe it was Johnny's Dance Band because they had done some. That's an early local band, done some IDs for the station. They say it's not them. Nobody knows if it was sent in by somebody. No one, no production directors remember where it came from. So Growing Up ID, Growing Up in Philadelphia.
Yep.
Anybody knows that? Please tell me. We all want to know.
Yeah, Pierre would play that one quite often. Hey, last thing, you have some book signings on the schedule, book signing events, including this one. Tell us about it.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. My God, talk about having imposter syndrome. Like, how did I get there? There are super famous people on that stage. But anyway, yes, Jon DeBella, who lives in Nashville now, will be flying up to interview me and join me for this event at the Philadelphia Free Library on the Parkway. It's at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, September 15th. Registration is free, but you must register. And I will tell you, there are a lot of special surprises. It's such a big event that there are former staff members coming in, flying in from all around the country, as far away as California. And it'll be a great time. So I think that audience, that room holds about 1,000 people. So it might be just totally packed full of crazy WMMR fans, and everybody wants to see Jon again. And there's a Q&A as well. So if people have questions, hopefully we remember the answers.
That is going to be great. So is this book, The Mighty WMMR.
I got one too.
I bet you do. Erin, tell people how they can get the book, and we will close this out.
All right. Well, the book is everywhere, like just a standard book. You know, you can buy it on Amazon.com. You can buy it at Temple University Press website. It's in Barnes & Noble stores. It's in local bookstores all around here. You know, you go to your local bookstore. Also, you can check my Facebook page for the book, The Mighty MMR, or Instagram. There'll be a lot of other signings besides the Philadelphia Free Library at Barnes & Noble's all over. I'll be in Hamilton. I'll be in Narberth. I'll be in Willow Grove. I'll be all over the place. So you can get a book there and get a signed copy and ask me a question. And, you know, some people are coming with me. For example, Ray Koob is coming with me to the Doylestown Bookshop. That's September 23rd. So some of the DJs will join me for some of these events.
Fantastic. Well, best of luck with all of that, and congratulations on a fantastic book. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today.